Hello, I'm Mike Ryan. I'm the Chief Networking Officer at PIMS, and welcome to our second season of Minutes with Mike. Now in my 33rd year at PIMS, I've had the privilege of partnering with companies both large and small, supporting their PR and marketing through customized fulfillment and distribution that delivers measurable impact on their brand perception, boosts positive affinity, and fuels their overall brand performance. And throughout my career, I've had the chance to work alongside many talented folks. This is their story. On this show, we'll sit down with some of the world's top marketing and business thought leaders to learn more about their success, how they got there, how marketing helped them achieve their goals, what strategies they used, and what inspires them. Please join me on this journey as we learn from those who are changing the way we think about business. So sit back, enjoy. You're listening to Minutes with Mike. Welcome, everybody, to Minutes with Mike. I have the absolute pleasure today to talk to Leslie Ann Hall from Iced Media. Welcome, Leslie.
Hi, Mike. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you.
I certainly appreciate that. Leslie, if you haven't had the chance to hear her speak, and I don't remember an event where I went to where she wasn't on some sort of a panel discussion, the last time I got the luck of hearing you was at the Lead Summit, which was wonderful. But you always bring a wonderful aura about you. The content is second to none. So I'm blessed to have you today. And again, thanks again.
That's a very big compliment. And the Lead was actually one of the most fun conferences that I've had the chance to do. I was on stage with Stormy Steele, who is the #1 top earning affiliate in the history of TikTok Shop in the US and the UK. She's a good friend. We always have a good time together. And I think the audience was really laughing along with us.
Absolutely. It came across. It was wonderful. Great job. So I wanted to start from the very beginning. We're going to get into all sorts of good stuff about the social selling and e-commerce and all that good stuff. But I wanted to ask you, as many of the viewers and listeners will want to know, how did it all start with you? How did you become who you are and creating Iced Media? How did that start? But like maybe even started going through school. Like what made you think that this was going to be the next big thing as it has become?
I wish I could say I had the foresight for any of that, but I think I owe it especially to the young people that might be listening. And I do a lot of mentorship, to be honest, and say I didn't have it all figured out then, and I still don't have it all figured out. My journey was not necessarily one by design, and I think it's been a lot of happy accidents that have brought us here together today, Mike, and have given us the pleasure to work together in various ways. I grew up in Needham, Massachusetts, and am the oldest of 3 children and had, I'd say, a pretty normal, typical childhood. I ended up going to the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and starting a career in politics, which a lot of people don't know and I don't talk about.
You would have been great at that if you went that way.
But working for Senator Bill Bradley, who a lot of people know if they're sports fans and were potentially New York Knicks fans back in the day. And that was a great experience working at the Senate building in Washington, D.C. and working on Capitol Hill. But I think that experience firsthand at such a young age allowed me to understand that my passions lied elsewhere. And I think I'm a person who very much understands and believes that if there's something that I'm passionate about, I believe I can make it happen. So I came to New York City, a place where I had always been very enamored with, and started working in publishing and primarily in entertainment, working in some different music titles, and just got really lucky and had the opportunity to work in the digital arena very early on, working with a lot of big brands at the intersection of entertainment and digital, and started Iced Media over 20 years ago. But it really wasn't until, I would say, kind of the COVID era when we really got intentional about verticalizing the business and thought very critically about what is it that we can be best in the world at. And I think as almost an accidental entrepreneur who, worked for big companies and always felt fine having a job and working for others, and then partnered with some of my bosses in publishing to start Iced Media, in the early years, we didn't have the focus and the vision that I think is required to really differentiate, especially an agency in this climate. We took on a lot of business, a lot of services, a lot of clients that maybe allowed us to grow or allowed us to have a certain size of client or staff, but we were taking on things that we weren't best at. And I think having that moment of, maybe quiet and reflection during COVID, we were able to really look at what were the things where we were unparalleled. And we were a meta business partner. We worked very early on with Twitter, with Snapchat, with YouTube. And we really understood how to grow and scale businesses using paid social media since the earliest days. And we had a lot of phenomenal case studies in the beauty vertical with brands at L'Oreal like Maybelline and Redken, turning around Elizabeth Arden and having a billion-dollar exit to Revlon, and decided to really focus in on beauty at the intersection of performance media. We had been doing things like content production and $500,000 photo shoots with Reese Witherspoon and Chelsea Handler. We had been doing a lot of organic social media, creator contracting, things that were really saturated in the marketplace, but that we weren't necessarily the best in the business at. But once we got very serious and very intentional about where we could be differentiated and where we could excel, it kind of turned into a flywheel from there.
Well, the amount of growth that your company's been doing, there's no surprise that not only being able to engage on these different platforms, but do it successfully. And I guess my next question segues perfectly from what you're talking about. So if you were a client and you were interested in being involved in this sort of dynamic of social selling, you have Meta, you have Amazon, you have TikTok, of course. Speak to me a little bit about, because I'm naive to it. What are the differences in those? There's QVC, there's all different ways of social selling. What do you think, what are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the pluses? Which one do you prefer? Which one do you talk a little bit to that?
It's a really good question. And at Iced Media, we take very seriously the responsibility that comes with helping stakeholders and people in the C-suite and practitioners navigate those decisions. Those are the conversations we're having every day. And one of the things I'm often telling, usually it's a founder-led business or a C-suite business that, might be pretty much, not an early stage business, because I think the majority of our clients have, some sort of foundation where they're at a life stage that makes sense to bring on an agency like ours. But oftentimes they'll come to us and the first thing we talk about is what are their business goals and where do they want their incrementality to come from? And even if they're coming to us and they're saying, oh, we, saw you on a panel with TikTok and we're interested in TikTok Shop, our conversation is really zoomed out about the retail ecosystem, about their margins, about their average order value, about their retailers, because it isn't right for everyone. I mean, certainly there's tremendous opportunity. It's the fastest growing beauty retailer in history. It's the number 6 beauty retailer in America today. That happened in less than 2 years. I mean, the data is unbelievable, but that doesn't mean it's right for every business. So when you ask the question about how we help brands make those choices, there are so many factors. And one of the things I say, which may not make me very popular, is I think most brands can do one thing really well at a time based on the amount of resources, the amount of time, and the amount of money they have. So even though it might be more lucrative when a company comes to us and says, oh, this year we really want to grow our e-commerce business, we're launching at Ulta, and we want to onboard to TikTok Shop, can you help us? We kind of say, okay, that's really ambitious. Based on your budget, we're really going to need to prioritize. We might not start with TikTok Shop. Let's look at Ulta. That's a really big opportunity, and we can use these other channels. And then there are ways to approach that. So, not every channel is right for every brand. And there are a multitude of factors that we look at. Some of those that I mentioned around things like margin on products, average order value, and other goals and priorities. Some businesses looking for top line sales, some looking for EBITDA growth. It really depends on the business goals.
I think that's a really great point too, because there's also the concerns about, there's selling and then there's, of course, content, right? Two different worlds. But the content, and as you mentioned, and it was a really good point, you have to explore all these opportunities, like something like Snapchat, right? With you had spoken previously about lower funnel ads and stuff like that. When you help clients navigate this, are these totally different conversations? Like, I'm curious, when you're talking about content and establishing regular content based on product offerings, I'm sure you have in sight selling at some point, right? And it all marginalizes down to the sale. But how do you connect those two, or how do you navigate when is not enough and when is too much?
You can never have too much content.
As I was saying it, I'm like, I know she's going to say this.
I think my friends at TikTok and Snapchat would agree with me. They'd be happy with that answer. It's interesting, even when you were talking about TikTok Shop, for example, and if it's right for every brand, I think even if a brand isn't necessarily going to prioritize TikTok Shop as its number one sales channel, I'd say probably greatest value that TikTok Shop has brought to beauty marketers today, and really marketers, but obviously we specialize in beauty, is its affiliate center. So for anyone that's listening that may not be so familiar or may be reluctant to onboard to TikTok Shop because they're not really looking for sales generated there, or think they might be in a category or have a product that's not exactly the right fit for shopping on TikTok, what the affiliate center allows you to do with a really kind of turnkey ecosystem that we've never seen before on any channel is make full-size products available to sample in real time to hundreds of thousands, or maybe even at this point 1 million creators who are called affiliates, that will request a free unit of your product, that will co-create content without an upfront payment, in the hopes of earning a percentage of sales from the content that they post. The ability to do that at scale to the tune of hundreds or thousands of pieces of content on a monthly basis has never really existed before. And this is even outside of the expectation that it's going to drive meaningful revenue for your business. So some of our clients look at TikTok Shop and they say, this might not be our number one sales channel, but we have an unbelievable awareness lift because there's so much more content, there's so much more conversation, there's so much more visibility for our brand and our products in the TikTok ecosystem, because we've unlocked the power of the creator affiliate center within TikTok Shop. Or they are investing in TikTok Shop with creators at scale, and they're seeing an unprecedented halo effect, like we've seen recently with clients like Moroccan and Biore pore strips, where we know Amazon is going to be the number one beneficiary of TikTok and TikTok Shop in terms of increased sales, but even Sephora, Ulta, e-commerce channels are seeing an increase in subscribe and save as a result of TikTok Shop virality. So it really is fueling, as TikTok will say, it's fueling commerce everywhere. And it really is that creator-led content driving discovery for new and existing products.
You're right. It is everywhere. And it got me thinking as you were giving that answer, because my next question was going to be about AI and the technology supporting that. And I know that you've really looked to your team to help explore, how AI can help with creators and tools. But, we are on the back end of fulfillment and distribution. So our clients look to us to engage AI to create obviously easier to use operational platforms. But to help with that foundational support, right? They want to shrink their footprint of the amount of storage that they're keeping with us or whoever they're keeping with, and they know that that type of technology, at least on my end, is going to support their efforts to sort of cut to the chase, right? They want to shrink the footprint, and gone are the days where manpower would store, just to dumb it down a little in the warehouse world, you'd have to store all the iced media stuff here so we keep track of it, and all the enabling stuff was over here. But now with AI, it's just about take as minimal amount of room as possible, and the system will keep track of where everything is. So it's really come a long way. So in my small world, it's come a huge long way to help adapt sales and client performance. I can only imagine on your world what it's doing and what the expectations are of your clients to engage that type of new technology. Not new anymore.
Absolutely. When we think about AI at Ice Media, we kind of think about it in two different buckets. So one is operationally, right? So in terms of how we run and operate a small bootstrapped business that doesn't have any institutional funding that, I've built from the ground up. I, brought on one of our employees as a partner over the past few years, but we are a bootstrapped women owned business. So what AI has been able to do, and our kind of roadmap for AI from an operations perspective, in terms of the foundation of our business, in terms of our processes, and the ability to allow our team members, we at the beginning of this year did an agency survey in terms of learning from the different team members where they would want to spend their time if it wasn't doing these, administrative tedious tasks that, AI is kind of slowly taking over for us. And so much of it is strategy work, collaborating with their peers, building those relationships with clients. So now that we're starting to see some of that time back and seeing that time and that value going back to our clients is phenomenal, especially working in a service-based business. So we're so excited about that. And then obviously just in terms of the work that we do, getting done better and smarter. And we actually built our AI fueled tech stack probably about 2 to 3 years ago. And that's just making all of our campaigns smarter. So it's been that long that we've been looking at, all of the data from our campaigns, which surprisingly, when we built it, a lot of it didn't exist in terms of custom integrations with TikTok performance data, with Snapchat performance data, so that we could see it in a single view. So, for example, the way that we run campaigns is we are not setting a specific budget for Meta and a specific budget for TikTok, especially for performance media. We see everything in a single view dashboard because we built these custom pipes. We have AI fueled recommendations that are showing us where a client, based on their objectives, is getting the most efficient campaigns. And that's fueling how we're making recommendations. Whereas before we had that solution, you'd have a, media manager going into 4 different back ends of a dashboard, pulling reports manually, and what may take 6 hours, is being done in a matter of seconds. So that's phenomenal. And then the other side of it is what we're actually doing for our clients. So on the generative AI side, obviously in beauty, we have to be a bit more careful, right? We know that the majority of creator-led content that we talked about is really transformation, before and after, efficacy, results of beauty products, whether it's color cosmetics that are, transforming how your face looks, whether it's a hair styler product that is, giving you a sleek look. And I think that trust really needs to be there between the consumer and the brand, in that what they're seeing is actually taking place on a real person and not a robot. I think some of the things that we've seen the platforms do, especially with Meta and TikTok in terms of AI avatars and a lot of the Gen AI content, is really exciting. But I think in beauty, we have to be a lot more careful than, necessarily other industries where that type of transformation and trust is not as important. But we are using it with things like, remixing content or, recommendations in terms of things like content ideas. And that's really exciting too.
You mentioned your team, right? So I don't remember ever seeing you in an event where you didn't have members of your team along with you, whether it be Gabrielle Martinelli or Carson Ward. They're always there to support you, and they're fabulous. I'm curious because on my end, and it's funny because I was just interviewing somebody, and part of the conversation we had during the interview was, I'm 58 years old, and I certainly, when I grew up in this business, there was no influencers, there was no cell phones, right? It was a different world. I learn a lot of what I learn by the Gen Z or the new group that's coming that will one day take my job in this wonderful podcast and do wonders with it. But I learn from their feedback, interacting with them on client calls, hearing clients' requests and expectations, and then having responses to it where I might just scratch my head a little bit because I didn't really know exactly what you were talking about, but you sounded wonderful. Can you tell me what that was? How do you sort of engage your team, maybe from a leadership point of view, but also just as a learning moment? Like, how do you make them comfortable enough to share this information with you? And then how do you work it so that they'll want to come forth and say, like, here's what I'm learning about this. And I just learned this off of Snapchat and this on Twitter. I was on Meta and this happened. Talk to that a little bit.
I love this question so much. I'm going to try not to cry because sometimes I get emotional when I talk about my team because I feel like the luckiest person in the world.
That's awesome.
I would not be sitting here with you today if it was not for my team so much. I often tell them, all of these opportunities that I have is me on a stage, but I really am a vessel for them and their talent and their brilliance and their work, right? And I think oftentimes, all of the time, it's like I'm getting all of the credit, I'm getting all of the attention or the accolades, and that's not fair, right? It really is their hard work that allows me to have all of this visibility and all of this success. And I try as much as I can to make sure that they know that and they feel that. I think a few things, right? We're in a service-based business. I mentioned that. Every year I do a presentation to my team and we talk about our goals for the coming year. And our number one goal is always the same, and it's employee and client retention. And we have to retain our clients because that's how we grow our business. But we can't retain our clients if we can't retain our staff. And in 2023 and in 2024, we had 100% employee retention rate. And for an agency, I tell people that as an agency, and I think anyone that comes from the agency world that hears that, it can't believe it, right? Because I think agencies are notorious for having a lot of turnover, for having a lot of churn, for having people, kind of burn out. And I don't say that in a disparaging way. I'm not a person that kind of looks down on how other businesses operate, but I think for us, we definitely look for people that share our values. And I think that's the single most important thing. I think we used to maybe approach people. You said you were interviewing someone recently and you were talking about, what that looked like. And I think for us, we've kind of pivoted in terms of how we hire people. And we used to think more like, oh, does this person have beauty experience? Oh, does this person have TikTok experience? Has this person run D2C performance campaigns on Meta? And sure, those things are important, but now we really focus on their mindset, on their attitude. And it's changed so much in terms of, I don't want to say getting better people. I want to say getting the right people who are going to fit in well with our culture and who are going to thrive here at Iced Media. So I think, we talked even yesterday with my team about culture. I was reading an article about Airbnb, and I think they're known really well for their culture. And a lot of what I was talking to my team about is just this idea of self-governance, right? Because I think, of course, at any company, you have systems and rules and guidelines and processes. And we're an agency, of course, we have tons of processes, but we don't have a lot of processes around things like, I'll call it employee behavior and hierarchy and hours and be in your desk and be in front of your computer and those types of things. And I think when you have a culture that people share values and share that mindset and take accountability, we have a very accountability centric culture. I say this a lot, anytime we're in Slack or we're on a call and there's like a small thing, you'll hear 7 people say, "Oh, that was my fault. Oh no, well, I should have called you. Oh, I should have reminded you. Oh, I should have double checked it." Right. And I always say, like, "Oh, everything is my fault. It's my company." Right. But I think it comes from the top down. And I think when you have a culture where people don't feel, I say this with my kids too, like where people don't feel like they're going to get in trouble, but they feel like they're there to be supported, and they feel like they're there to be encouraged, and they feel like they have, support behind them. You don't really need to police them. They just come in every day and they're very motivated and they're very collaborative. And I am the luckiest person in the world to have my team.
I'm going to pay you a big compliment, because obviously 100% retention of employees and 90% retention of clients is not something that comes across every day, right? And I think I was in Miami and you were down there with Carson, and I was talking to her, you were speaking to somebody else, and I was talking to her, and in my brain, I was saying, this is not the founder and CEO of the company I'm speaking to, but you would never know that from the way that she's speaking, because not only was she well spoken and coming across very confident, but just the insight that she had to the points that she was talking to speaks volumes to your leadership style, because A, she knew what she was talking about, B, she was sharing what she was talking about, but most importantly, she gave that feel of, this is mine to own. I'm here to answer your questions. I'm telling you where we're headed. That is something in this world of ours that's very difficult to find, and certainly very difficult to lead. So kudos to you for that. I did want to talk to you a little bit about Iced Media itself, right? So you've purposely narrowed the focus of what you're offering to clients on that beauty, wellness, lifestyle world, right? In this world, it would be very easy to go out, like you said, if you wanted to, you could go out and hire 25 people that have beauty experience, throw them on the phones, and upsell to every agency that comes along, and probably make hundreds of millions of dollars doing it. But you have made a conscious decision to make sure that you're standing behind your message, and in doing so, you've narrowed the focus that you want your team to focus on. Talk a little bit about that too, and why Iced Media is so successful. And we work with a lot of clients that work with you, and I hear it not only from your team, but I hear it on the back end too, about the successes that you bring to them. Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, thank you for that nice compliment. Also, I just want to say quickly, thank you for saying those nice words about Carson. And I hope those
I hope she doesn't get annoyed.
Comes out, and I'll tell her that you shared that as well, because she's amazing. And I do hope that every single person on my team feels the same way, that in any room, in any place, they should feel that same confidence
Agreed.
to talk about the business as if it is their own. To answer your question about focus, to me, it really comes down to being a specialist. And I think that's what the question is about. I think being a specialist in a world where oftentimes knowing everything or doing everything is really celebrated takes a lot of discipline. I can't tell you how many times, we'll have a contract on the table and people will say, "Oh, well, we really need you to do this," or we really need SEO too. Can you find, and it's very hard to say, "Oh, but we're not best in the world at that. We're not going to give you the quality and the service that you deserve for what you need there. I have a phenomenal network of other founders and other agencies. It's funny, people will see me with people like Lara Schmoisman or Mimi Banks or Renee Ogaki, and they'll be like, "Isn't that your competitor?" And I have such an abundance mindset. People are always sending me business. I'm always sending other people business. Every brand is not the right fit for me. I'm not the right fit for everybody. There's plenty for everyone. And I'm a big believer that for the brands and the companies that we work with, we are very intentional about knowing that we can drive the success that they deserve. If we're not going to be the best company to do that, we're going to try to connect them with the one that is. And it does take discipline to say no, to walk away from money, sometimes a lot of it. But at the end of the day, we have our reputation and we have to deliver, and we have to live with ourselves. Yeah. Doing right by people. And I think a lot about, my purpose, and, maybe this is getting off topic a little bit, but, I think my purpose as a human, you mentioned your age, I turned 50 this year. I think my purpose as a human really is about being in service to others and helping people, and not about getting as much money as quickly as possible at the expense of my team or the expense of the quality of work. I'm not interested in being in that business. I'm interested in the business of doing good work with good people and having the outcomes that they deserve.
It's funny too, what used to be called intestinal fortitude, right? The ability to sort of look beyond the obvious, right? And build that type of community is something I talk about that a lot on Minutes with Mike, is this whole sense of community, because it wasn't too long ago, 20 years ago, when we're working with different agencies, whether they're single practitioners or conglomerates, everything was so close to the vest, right? And what you're saying you're doing and other folks are doing, and it's becoming more and more prevalent, never what used to happen. That people would be afraid. They were so afraid of their own abilities, I think, and so afraid of losing this much space that they would just sort of yes their way through it. Versus what I think the world is coming to now, which you really hit on the head, which is, this is out of my lane. So I know somebody that's perfect for you. And what you've done is you've obviously turned them onto somebody that might be able to answer this question for them, but you've also built your own abilities to share that partnership with that client that is now going to come to you for every single question they may have. So I personally am 100% with you on scaling that. Like, that's the way to go. And that's certainly the way to build that trust and community that we're in. You wear many hats, my friend. I probably can't list them all on this, but I want to talk about Hot Drops, because we're both members of the CEW, and they had a recent post about Hot Drops, of something wonderful you're doing. So before we get into that, tell me a little bit about Hot Drops, another company. I believe you co-founded that one, and it's going places. I'm starting to hear a lot about it. So tell me about that.
Absolutely. So Hot Drops, this is our latest drop, which I'll tell you about in a minute, is a business that I started really recognizing, we were one of the first US agency partners with TikTok on TikTok Shop and its first beauty specialist. And, in that process, I think one of the biggest things that we realized is, all of the data that we're seeing, where 68% of purchases on TikTok Shop are impulse buys, 35% of purchases on TikTok Shop are bundles. It's very much a trend-driven ecosystem, but the majority of ways that brands are showing up is really single product or single brand. So we had this idea that we could really make trends shoppable. When you think about the trends that are happening on TikTok, Pirate Girl, Mob Wife, Jelly Donut, Cottagecore, there's so many, and there's so many new ones all the time. It's fueling growth throughout the beauty ecosystem, right? It's driving sales at Sephora and Ulta and really everywhere. So we wanted to make those trends shoppable. So we created Hot Drops as TikTok's first shop where beauty trends meet collectibles. So each time we do a drop, we work with a multitude of different beauty brands and we combine those products in a bundle with a collectible piece of merch that is limited time, limited quantity, really connecting with that FOMO must have mentality of the TikTok shop buyer.
Yeah.
So this is our latest drop, if I can plug it.
Please.
It is in partnership with celebrity esthetician Ian Michael Crum. This one is very special to my heart because 100% of the proceeds go to the Melanoma Research Foundation. So this is the summer kit that is a must-have. You get this custom co-branded bag, and then you get a full-size SPF 50 from Image Skincare, which is the #1 science-backed esthetician brand for skincare. A Ven Sickle Fate Post Sun protective cream, and the Color Science SPF for your lips. So it's a sun safety kit curated by, like I said, celebrity esthetician Ian Michael Crum in partnership with Hot Drops. And it just dropped this week.
What's the best way to get on board on that?
It is available today on the TikTok shop for Hot Drops, HAUTDROPS.
Awesome. I sent you a Minutes with Mike mug, and I sent you a Minutes with Mike t-shirt, which I hope you have gotten. If you haven't, it's on its way. I won't swear to it, but I hope a Hot Drops package comes to my office. I'm just saying, but we'll throw that on for another day.
Well, I should plug that our fulfillment partner for Hot Drops is Pims.
Yay! There you go.
And I do know how to get you one of these because we are working with the best fulfillment partner in the business. And I know that the Pims 3PL is really seeing explosive growth. We vetted so many 3PLs when we were deciding who to partner with for Hot Drops, and you guys were amazing. I stayed out of the process. I let my team handle everything, and they came back and were like, we've got to work with Pims. And in my mind, like, obviously I knew who I wanted to work with, but we're on our second drop. You guys are amazing.
That's great. We really appreciate that from the bottom of our heart. We really appreciate not only the opportunity, but the long-term partnership that we built, and we always love seeing you. Leslie, as we close down, I wanted to ask you, as I do a lot of the guests here, talk to Leslie Ann Hall when you were in college. Like, somebody's coming out in the industry, they would love to be in your seat. They want to get there as quickly as they can. What sort of stuff do you think is coming up next? What should they be focusing on? How should they learn? What pitfalls should they look forward or not forward to? How can they best be suited to enter this workforce?
That's such a good question. I absolutely love working with young people, mentoring young people. People are always sending me, their friends and their kids' friends. And I try to give them as good of guidance as I can. I think a few things. I think first and foremost, a lot of the college kids that I talk to feel an insurmountable pressure to think they need to have it all figured out, very early. I certainly did not. And things work out the way they are intended to. I recently am studying Buddhism, so I think you're getting me at this very specific moment in my journey where I'm in a kind of very reflective state. I think treating yourself and others with kindness and patience is the single most important thing we can do as humans at all stages. So not worrying so much about that pressure is the single most important thing. Number two, just networking. The relationships that you build at every single stage of your life are going to matter forever. And, I try to talk to my older son is 17, and I try to explain this to him too. It's like every teacher, every coach, every friend, every part-time job is someone who has the potential to introduce you to your next opportunity, to give you a referral, a recommendation, just the one thing I say that my son hates that I say so much, but I say how you do anything is how you do everything. And how you show up for those people is what they're going to remember. And just, giving each opportunity your best is the best way to grow your network with people who are going to be champions for you throughout your career. And then the third thing, and I stole this from Kris Jenner, and I know if my team listens to this, they're definitely gonna laugh, but also roll their eyes at the same time because they hate when I say it. But if the answer is no, you're talking to the wrong person. And I'm such a believer that you can make anything happen if you try. And, I don't say that in a way like I don't believe in being dishonest or breaking rules or cutting the line, but I do think there's a way to be strategic and creative and relentless in your pursuits. And I think related to, what I said about building relationships and, asking for help, I think especially as women, oftentimes we can feel nervous or scared to ask for help or worry so much that the answer might be no that we just don't ask. And I used to be more like that. And I think later in my career, I started asking. And you are going to be so surprised. Just start, right? Just one day, start asking every time and don't make yourself small and just say, hey, I saw on LinkedIn you're connected to that person. Or, hey, I think your dad works in this field. Or, hey, I saw that you have that friend that you went out to drinks with the other day. Just ask. And what you'll end up being so surprised at is the majority of people are really willing to help. And of course, every now and then someone will say, I'm not going to make that call, or I don't know them that well, or no, I can't do that. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes.
Yeah.
And it will open doors that you never thought you would get through. So those are my words of advice. I hope they help.
Leslie, very well said. Add motivational speaker to your list of accomplishments. Well done. Leslie Ann Hall from Iced Media, thank you so much for being our guest. I look forward to seeing you at the next networking event. You're everywhere. So how can somebody get in touch with you if they want to sign on as a client, or they want to pick your brain, or they just need some help? How can they get in touch with you?
Thank you, Mike. This has been amazing. And I am Leslie Ann Hall on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok, and my website is icedmedia.com. So feel free to reach out. This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks again.